Hey, Lupus family. So, I just wanted to come on here and talk to you guys about getting a diagnosis. This can take, on average, about 6 years. I've spoken to a lot of people where it's taken them a lot longer, even. In no way do I want to be negative, but I do think that this is a conversation that needs to be had because if we don't start having this conversation and publicly putting this out there, then nothing is ever going to change. 6 years to get a diagnosis, that's a long time for your immune system to be wreaking havoc in your body. And I think oftentimes we're not given aggressive enough treatment until we're deathly ill or our quality of life has been affected so much. This is a big issue for us. A lot of doctors seem to be hung up on labs instead of looking at symptomology, and I'm really talking about the ANA test. A study out of, I believe, Duke University was done, and they found that 30% of the completely healthy population has a positive ANA. You gotta be kidding me that they're still using this to diagnose autoimmune disease. Now, I remember when I first got diagnosed in 2016, I believe. My rheumatologist made the diagnosis reluctantly based on symptoms, but also C3 and C4 complement depletion. When I went back to him years later, he basically said, oh, well, the ANA test wasn't as reliable as we once thought. Here's the issue, though. That was in New York, and unfortunately, it just seems because I've received healthcare in Florida and I've received healthcare in New York, there is definitely a difference between the Northeast and the South as far as medical care. Some rheumatologists that I've seen will try to tell me that I don't have lupus at all, solely based on the fact that my ANA is negative. It's been negative this whole time. You can have debilitating autoimmune disease and you could not have a positive ANA for more than 10 years. I'm just not really understanding why this is still being used as a diagnostic criteria, because I've met a lot of people that are like me and their lives have been affected so much by this, and their disease is completely debilitating and they have every symptom, and some of them, even like me, have complement deficiencies, but they're not being treated just because they don't have a positive ANA. It seems that when new medical research comes out, there's such a lag of this being common knowledge for all these specialists. You could be in one state or go to one doctor, even in the same state, and they could be completely aware of things like the Duke study, and then you could go to a different part of the country or a different doctor even in the same state and they have no idea what you're talking about, and oh no, you just have fibromyalgia. They'll try to tell you something stupid like that. I do see this as being a huge problem, which brings me to my next point. Health insurance can be a big issue. There are some states, especially in the southern part of the United States, people just don't have access to health insurance. If you're so debilitated that you're unable to work and in turn unable to get Medicaid because certain states, really the South, I'm talking about specifically, I don't know about the rest of the country, don't have expanded Medicaid. And so if you become so debilitated that you can't work, then you can end up in this situation where you don't have health insurance and you cannot go and, let's say, file for disability because you're not even able to work and get the medical treatment that you need, because it's just a vicious circle. You can't work, so you can't get health insurance, and then you can't get disability to get Medicare or Medicaid because you can't prove your case and you can't get to the doctors and specialists that you need to prove, yes, this is what I have and this is what's going on. And I've talked to a number of people in that situation. I think that makes things really difficult for some people. If you're in this situation of having problems getting a diagnosis, or let's say that you have severe disease activity, because I was at one time for years actually in this situation where when I first got sick, I got deathly ill. I couldn't even barely walk most of the time. I couldn't get out of bed. I mean, it was really bad. They were maintaining me on just Plaquenil, which if you have that severe disease activity, I'm sure you guys all know is not enough, and steroids, which have long-term side effects. I did a video on that. If you guys are curious about that, you can go watch it, but you probably already know all the side effects of steroids. And I just continued to get worse, and it was terrible. I had no quality of life at that time. This is a huge problem. A lot of doctors don't want to treat aggressively. You know, the other thing is, for example, when I got my Cefnilo infusion, this medical assistant that gave the infusion, yes, the state of Florida allows medical assistants to give these infusions, which I think is completely insane, by the way. She actually has lupus. She told me that she just deals with it. She literally drives to work with the radio blasting in her car because she's like falling asleep trying to get to work. Now she works for a rheumatologist, so she sees all these medications and what the side effects, and she is so afraid of the medications and their side effects that she is just dealing with this disease that is severe enough for her to be falling asleep on her way to work because she's so afraid of these lupus drugs. And that's another thing. A lot of these lupus medications that are for moderate to severe disease activity, I'm talking the anti-rejection drugs like Cellcept, azathioprine, the brand name Imuran, and these infusions or injections like the Benlysta. These drugs come with a warning. They can cause cancer. I am not really seeing how this should have ever been looked at by the medical community as a viable option for treating lupus. I mean, what happens when you have lupus and then on top of that you get cancer? I'm not trying to scare you guys by any means. We have to do what we have to do. We have to take these drugs. All I'm saying is something really needs to change here, and this is why I started this channel and why I'm just trying to speak up about these things, because I think it's completely insane and it scares me, and it's always in the back of my mind that these drugs come with that warning on them. It is really scary. The other thing that grinds my gears is the specialist gatekeeping that goes on. It was kind of crazy when I left upstate New York and came to Florida after being on all these immune suppressants and being treated for years for systemic lupus and having a long-standing diagnosis. I get down here and literally I ran out of my lupus medications and had to travel all the way back to New York numerous times because they wanted a referral for me to see a rheumatologist. I don't understand this when you have a patient that has a long-standing lupus diagnosis and they can easily be sent office notes and labs or whatever from my previous rheumatologist. This specialist gatekeeping is ridiculous. And I say that because there's a lot of reasons why, people move, and you're in a situation like I was in. It was weeks during a certain time of the year in the South, especially Florida. There's 6-8 month wait times for rheumatologists down here. That's a long time. You can even attempt to schedule your appointments, but until your health insurance is switched over to Florida health insurance, they won't even let you make those appointments. So you really have no choice. And this is what forced me to have to travel back and forth between New York and Florida, which was not pleasant in the condition that I was in at that time. And not affordable either, to be honest, is unfortunately, and this is no shade to the states that have this issue currently, it's just the facts are the facts. There are certain states in this country, Florida's definitely one of them, I'm sorry, that have really bad medical care compared to some other states. Really bad, deplorable. To be honest with you, I don't come on here and sugarcoat things. I'm just here to be honest and tell my truth and my story and what I'm seeing. And the thing is, Medicaid, if you get sick and you're young and you're debilitated, you know, you can't travel to another state for medical care if you're not getting what you need in the state that you're in with Medicaid, only if you have Medicare. The problem with this is a lot of us that have lupus get diagnosed young enough that we don't have Medicare. We can't just go to another state for treatment. This is a big problem for a lot of people. I don't think I ever would have got the proper diagnosis and treatment had I gotten sick and been in the state of Florida at that time. I can confidently say it would not have happened and I would have suffered greatly. There's a lot of things that I think Florida does right, but this is not one of them. And I know there's other states that are like this too. It's just really unfortunate, but I do think that not being able to travel to another state is not helping. I think this could really contribute to why people are waiting 6 years or more to get a diagnosis. And then oftentimes I think that they kind of will wait to give a diagnosis, even if the labs show what they're looking for this perfect box of systemic lupus or whatever autoimmune disease you have going on. A lot of times they wait till you get really, really sick. And my thought process on this is, if your immune system is just running rampant, doing all this damage, now I don't think we have enough data to say one way or another because it's taking so long for people to get a diagnosis. But I venture to say if it's caught earlier, people might be able to be maintained on less aggressive medications that have less consequences, or let's say less scary warning labels, like maybe just being able to take Plaquenil. If the immune system was never let to get that far out of control and that dysfunctional. Now, I could be completely wrong on this. This is just based on my limited medical knowledge. I'm not a doctor or a nurse. I was just a CNA for a number of years. To me, I mean, not only that, your immune system's just running around doing all this potentially permanent organ damage and tissue damage in general. That can't be good, you guys. If you have systemic lupus symptoms or autoimmune disease symptoms, but you have a negative ANA, or you have complement deficiencies but a negative ANA, or maybe let's say you have all the symptoms, it's just not showing up in the labs, I definitely want to hear from you. I just want you to know that if you're in this situation, or maybe you've just been newly diagnosed, or you're fighting to get a diagnosis, that you're not alone. You're definitely not alone in this. And it's hard. And this is why I did the video about having a positive mindset and getting rid of the negativity, because the truth is, you're going to have to be very strong. Okay, you're going to have to be very strong to get through this and to keep pushing forward in the current state that this medical system is in. You're going to have to really just keep going until you get an answer. And I know that that's very difficult and it's hard to stay positive in that situation. Believe me, I know. I know it's hard to keep going to all these different specialists, but you got to keep going. For those of you who are currently fighting to get a diagnosis, this is my best advice for you. Best thing you could do right now is be as well informed as possible. Do your own research. Am I telling you to go on Google and try to be your own doctor? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying to make sure that you are well informed about the labs, about this disease, about the symptoms. Just make sure that you're well informed when you go into that rheumatologist's office, and keep a log of all of your symptoms, because especially when you're not feeling well, it can be easy to forget things, and sometimes they can be really important and vital to you getting a diagnosis. It could be to you something small, but to your doctor it could be much bigger than you think. The other thing I want to tell you is, listen, if you're seeing a rheumatologist and you're really, really sick and you're not getting answers, one, it doesn't matter what the doctor thinks of you, okay? If you're not getting answers and your rheumatologist seems to just be very like, oh yeah, not too interested, uh, then maybe you might want to consider finding a new rheumatologist. There's a bunch of lupus groups on Facebook. What I did was I went on there and asked other people in my county, in my area. We are very vital to each other in this way. Number one, for support, but two, for information like this. So I would definitely reach out to other lupus warriors and find out what doctors they're seeing and who they're having the most positive outcome with. Keep going. You have to keep going. Don't get discouraged. You will get answers. That's all I really wanted to come on here and say, you guys. I hope that you're all feeling okay and you're not in too much pain. I hope you have a good rheumatologist. Stay strong, guys.